Hello and welcome to part 7 of the Tim Burton style character. This is David Ward, and when last I left you we had marked the seams for our UV coordinates and also made his proportions a little skinnier. So there's a couple of things I want to do before we move any further, and that is to make his hands match the rest of his body because, you know, the fingers are a little too thick. So let's go ahead and select the hand all the way down, but not the wrist area. So now we're just Alt-S, just make them a little skinnier, about like so, and there we go. I'm going to turn my screencast keys on. Okay, and in playing with this in the in-between times, I noticed that there's an issue with the teeth as far as the UV coordinates go. So let's let's turn off our mirror modifier for now, and if we zoom in here on the teeth, you can see that there's some issues. Well, I guess it's not so easy to see. Maybe right there. There's some issue with the faces. I guess when let's tab into edit mode and hide the body. There we go. There's some faces being doubled up, like right there. So what I need to do is go to our front view and just get our edge select, or face select, and just select right there along the edge. And you can see that it did that on both sides. Those are getting, when the mirror modifier attaches, those are getting glued together face to face, and it throws off our UV coordinates. So let's just go ahead and delete those. Okay, now we turn the mirror back on. See, they map nicely there. Okay. Also, let's clear out the seams on these. We're going to Control E, clear seams. Okay, and we just need to put one seam along each edge like that, and then they'll unfold nicely. So let's go Control E. It's going to go ahead and select all of them, but we can do it one at a time. Actually, as we do it, let's go ahead and select everything. I guess we need to do it on this other side too. No, it's mirrored. Okay. So go ahead and hide that, and then go ahead and select. Go ahead and select this loop here, down to there. Control E. Mark that seam. Same thing on this guy. Mark that seam, and then last but not least, that seam. Okay, so now we should be good to go. Those should unwrap nicely. Okay, so we'll Alt-H to unhide everything. And one other place we need to mark a seam is I failed to do it around the ankle. So let's go ahead and add one there. Mark that. There we go. And I think that should be good to go. So we can tab out and go ahead and apply our mirror modifier now. So we tab back in. You can see that those seams we added on there automatically got mirrored over to the right side once we added the mirror modifier, or once we applied it. Okay, so he's ready to start painting on. Let's go ahead and save this. And I'm going to use an add-on that's called Paint Layers. I think that's what it's called. Anyways, that's what it does. So let's go to User Preferences, and under the add-ons, we're going to go down to Paint, and you can see Texture Paint Layer Manager. And I've already got it checked right there, but you go ahead and check that. And then we'll come out, and what that does is, you know, normally when you're painting a texture, you just go to Texture Paint, and then you got to come over here and turn this UV image editor and go New Image and set that up the right sizes and everything like that. And then once you finish painting, you come over here to the textures and, you know, set it up and apply it on there. But this plug-in here for the Texture Paint is when you go into Texture Paint, you can see it brings up some more options over here in your Properties panel. And all you got to do is you want to add a color texture, so go ahead and hit Add Color. And see it adds a layer right there, Tim Mesh Color. And then say you want to add a bump map for like wrinkles or something like that. Add a bump map. Adds another layer right there. And you want to control the amount of shininess, the specular level, the sheen. You just go ahead and add a specular level. And then if you want to change the color of the spec, you can do all that. It gives you all these options here. And as you're doing it, it automatically adds it to your material for your model that you're adding it to. So you can see here we have Tim Mesh Color, Tim Mesh Bump, Tim Mesh Specular. Now you get all those painted up and you want to save them. Well, the way you do that is you go into the folder that your model's in. So we can just fake going in there for here. We just go Save As, and that'll bring up our file browser. Just create a new directory, okay, and name it Textures, capital T EXTURES, Textures. Okay, then just click out and then just go cancel. And now, once you get them all painted up, you just go Save Paint Layers, and it'll automatically save them into that Textures folder. So if we go like Texture Browse, or Image, Open Image, if it'll let me do it, there we go, and go to our Textures folder, you can see it automatically saved those. So that saves you a lot of steps. It's very handy. So the way we use it is, let's go up to our, hit the little option there for the paintbrush beside the color, because that's the one we're going to work on. But before we're able to paint, we have to unwrap those UV coordinates that we set up the seams for. So let's go ahead and tab into edit mode, select everything, and we'll zoom out over here. Okay, and we're going to go U, unwrap. And you can see it unwraps all those, like I said with the clothing analogy. It flattens them out, it cuts them apart at the seams and flattens them out. So, for the most part, it looks pretty good. But you can see there's some obvious deformation here on the face especially, and on the torso. So we need to straighten those out. So the way we do that is, one thing that you can do while you're messing with the textures is come to your modifiers panel and go ahead and either turn off subsurf or turn it way down. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off for now, and it helps you move around your scene a lot faster. So anyways, the way we straighten this this skewed unwrap is you just select the center row across your whole area there, and we're going to scale it on the x-axis 0 times. So SX 0%, SX 0. And now we're going to hit P, and we're going to pin those in a vertical line. So once we're going to unwrap again, and it's going to go according to this straight line, and it's going to unwrap accordingly, and it's going to be symmetrical then. So let's do the same thing on the body. We can go ahead and rotate it a little bit so it's not quite as skewed. So SX 0, same thing. Go ahead and pin them. And let's go ahead and move them up into our texture area there. Same thing on this guy. Select all those. Okay. And just go ahead and move them up. Oops, missed part of it. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Since I just scaled that on the x-axis, it kind of doubled up some of the vertices. So let me unpin those. Let's see, what is it? UVs, unpin is Alt-P. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and unwrap again. And it made everything very big, so let's select those on Alt-P, unpin those. You unwrap. Okay. So it made the torso a lot bigger than everything else, but the way we can fix that is just go UV. Excuse me. UVs, average island scales, and it's going to make them, actually I guess you got to select everything first. UVs, average island scales, and it's going to make them all roughly the same size, relatively speaking. And now we can go UVs, pack islands, and it'll pack them into our image bounds a lot better. And as you can see, it's straightened up our torso. I wonder what's going on there. Looks like it separated it out a little bit. But anyways, let's go ahead and do the face real quick. Huh. For some reason it tore it apart a little bit. So let's try this again. There we go. I think when I just had a few selected and I hit average island scales, I think that's what threw it off. So pack islands. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we'll do the same thing on the face that we did on the torso. Select everything, and instead of just willy-nilly scaling it on the x-axis 0%, let's rotate it around a little bit first. and then we'll scale it on the x-axis 0%. Okay, sorry I had a phone call to break for that, but we'll jump back in here. So we got that rotated around and scaled 0% on the x-axis. Let's go ahead and pin those, and then go ahead and move them up a little bit. Actually, it doesn't really matter if you move them, because once you pack the islands again, it'll put them on there anyways. So we got that straightened out. Let's go ahead and unwrap. Come over here. Unwrap one more time. And then, see, it made the head symmetrical now. So we'll go ahead and select everything. UVs, average island scale, UVs, pack islands. So now everything should be nicely laid out in a nice, good manner. So, okay. So now we're ready to start painting on the guy. So let's come over here to our texture paint layers over here in our 3D viewport under the properties panel down here where we were looking at the different layers earlier, and make sure your color is selected. And let's go ahead and paint him kind of a grayish blue, as you've seen a lot of the Tim Burton style claymation characters have that general shade of skin. So if I just paint like this, it's just going to paint on what you can see, which for some reason it's taking a long time, even though we have subsurf turned off. But I want to paint his whole body, which I guess what we can do is just add a new image here and change it to the color we want, so we don't have to try to paint it on there. Got a grayish blue, and then give it 2048 dimension. Okay, and we'll go ahead and say okay. And now over here we got to make sure that our mesh color is using that image as its base. So let's come over here to our textures, and under Tim Mesh Color, let's change the image to this untitled one here, and let's go ahead and call that Tim Mesh Color 2. Okay, and now we'll come over here and go ahead and turn that off, turn that back on. Should it reload? Okay, now we got to tell it to use that one here. There we go. Okay, so now we have that nice color on there. Now one thing that really makes it look more claymation-esque is to bake the ambient occlusion onto our texture map. So it always has the darker shading around the nooks and crannies. So let's do that. Let's set up our ambient occlusion. Go to our world settings here, go down to ambient occlusion, turn that on, and let's set it to ray trace, leave it there, and give the samples, let's make that 10. And then let's go ahead and turn our subsurf back on, just 1, set the render down to 1 as well. And now we'll come over here to our scene settings, come down all the way down to bake, go and expand that out. And under bake mode, change that to ambient occlusion. And let's set the margin up a little bit to about 5. Okay. And go ahead and hit bake. And it's going to bake out the ambient occlusion. Like I said, the nooks and crannies are going to be a little darker. And it might take a little while, so I'll go ahead and pause recording until that finishes out, and then we'll be right back. Okay. Now finished out baking that, and as you can see, it looks a lot more like, well, like a Tim Burton character already, without us even having to do any effort. So I would like to use this on top of that blue color, but when we baked it, it went ahead and replaced it. So what we can do is just go over to our texture settings again. Actually, make sure we got our material selected. Let's go ahead and rename this material to Tim Material. There we go. And now we'll go to our texture settings. And when it created the material, it automatically created this texture right here, which is basically an empty texture. So let's turn that into a blend, and we'll go down to our colors, turn on ramp, and go ahead and delete. It's going to delete that color over here, and we're going to set this to that grayish blue again. About right there. The color settings I have are, the red is 0.444, green is, 0.587, Blue is 0.686 if you want to get it perfectly the same color that I have. Okay, so that's the color. Now we come to the mesh color, and it's using the baked ambient occlusion. So if we go to both, you can see right now it's only putting the ambient occlusion on top of our model, but I want to superimpose it over the bluish color. So the way we do that, let's go ahead and collapse all these guys here down until we just see the influence. And right now the color set to 1, that's good, but instead of blending a mix mode, we're going to change that to multiply. And now if we were to look through our camera, and tell you what, let's go ahead and get our camera set up a little bit better. Okay, and then set our lamp here over here so it's in the front. And let's go ahead and change this to a spotlight. Normally I would use a sunlight, but since we're going to be using particle hair later on, the buffered shadows that you can only get with a spotlight at this point, Blender 2.63, they might have, if you watch this later on in the future, hello future, okay, that was dumb, but they might have buffer shadows on the sun or whatever as well, but for now it's only on the spotlight. So set that to buffered shadows, and we'll mess with the settings of that later on once we start working with the hair. Let's go ahead and put that like so, rotate it around, and change the fall off from inverse square to inverse linear. Makes it a little bit brighter. And then we're going to come over here, Shift D, and create a duplicate of this lamp, and just set this energy to about 0.25. And now since we're going to render out, let's go ahead and change our ambient occlusion way down to about 0.15. And let's rotate this lamp over here up a little bit. Okay, so now we'll look through our camera, go ahead and hit F12 to render out. And you can see that it took that blue color and the ambient occlusion that was baked onto the texture, went ahead and superimposed over it. So there we go. That's how you do that, nice and easy. Trying to think. I'd like the lips to be a little bit darker as well. So let's look at the texture view. We can change the look there by rotating the lights around. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here on our ambient occlusion that we did. One thing you might do periodically is come over here and let's go to texture paint mode. Go ahead and save our paint layers periodically, just so in case Blender crashes or something, all of our work won't be lost. Okay, so one thing I'm noticing right now, right off the bat, is where the eyelids are coming out of the side of the head. It kind of cut those off right here. So let's go ahead and fix that. The way we can do that is just go to our, actually I guess we need to do it over here. Make this window a little bit smaller. Image painting. Okay. Where's my options? There they are, down here. Set the paint to soften, and let's change our radius down, strength up just a little bit. And let's come in here and just kind of just gently blur those together. Like so. Do the same thing on this side. And maybe just pretty much everywhere. Okay, that'll probably do. Now, one thing that I'm worried about is, like when we create the shape keys for him to blink, let's come back to object mode and go to our object to data and create a shape key real quick. And let's just select one of these eyelids. We'll end up deleting this later on, but I just want to see how it's going to look behind the head mesh for when he blinks. So let's set our 3D cursor right there. Oops, I did Shift D, I duplicated, didn't I? Yeah, so we'll go ahead and delete that. Shift S, selection to Well, I guess I need to select it first. Select cursor to selected. There we go. Now we can select the mesh and hit period, rotate around it, and just bring it out here like so. And then go ahead and set that up all the way. Now, that might work okay, but I'd like to make it with less of a transition there. So let's zoom out here and tab into edit mode there so we can see where our eyelids are. I think they're going to be these guys here and that guy there. So let's go ahead and blur with our blur tool. Where that gets darker and darker without such a harsh transition. Go and tab out there so I can see what I'm doing over here a little bit easier. And this guy. Okay, so that looks a little better, a little bit. Okay, so now, like I said, I want to make the lips a little darker, so let's come in here and... Okay, sorry, I had to pause and have another coughing fit. So, anyways, let's come over here and we could use the blur tool on this, but I'd like to just actually paint on there, so let's get the brush, set that to a darker, not black all the way, but just a darker gray for sure, and set the strength up. And actually a little darker than that even. Set the radius down. And we come in here and just brush there where we can see these lips. And then across the bottom. And you can see it being painted on there like so. Oops, a little too far. Okay, so there we go. And if you wanted to go in and add any other darknesses, like if you wanted to give him some nipples or something, you could do that. They're on the chest, probably like right in there, like so. No? There it is. Took it a second to update. That's weird. Huh. Guess it's a bug. Anyways, I'm gonna undo that. Alright, so for the most part I have the texture of the skin created. So again, go to texture paint mode, go ahead and save those paint layers. And now I want to work on the, running out of time, but real quick, let's work on the specular level, because like when we rendered him, he's way too shiny. So let's grab that one. There we go. And it's based on black, which is should be not shiny at all. So if we any sheen that we want to add, we'd add with white. So let's go ahead and set that key back down to 0. So let's give him a little bit of sheen to his parts of his face. So let's just gently brush there, like on his forehead, his chin, a little bit on his cheeks, and then maybe on his nose a little bit. And a little bit on his sides of his face. Okay, and we'll call that good for the sheen. So let's come back to solid mode. Maybe a little bit up there, actually. Come on, Blender, behave. Don't you crash on me. Let me pause recording so this gets worked out. So hold on just a second. Okay, pop back in. Good. Okay, so let's do one little dot there. Come on now. Okay, so let's go ahead and save those guys. And let's go to our settings here and make sure that the specular is being applied. Let's go ahead and set it to the specular color as well. It doesn't seem to be changing anything. So I guess let's just change this down to, let's try 0.15. And then the hardness, make that, say, 35. And now we'll go ahead and do a test render again. And he's still way too shiny. And the lips look a little too dark now compared to the rest of his skin. But let's set the intensity all the way to 0. What do you say? That should make it look quite a bit more like clay. Oh, I see. The specular has to be all the way down to 0 for the actual specular map to work like we want it to. So let's go ahead and jump back real quick to the color. And I would like to mute the darkness of the lips down a little bit. So let's go back to color there. And let's go ahead and set the strength there. And let's see. Okay, my brush is way too big. There we go. You can see it taking effect over there. And that looks quite a bit better, I think. Yeah. So now, let's see what he looks like. That looks a lot better. Okay, still too shiny. Let's change the influence right there. Or that's not for the specular. There we go. Set the intensity down to, let's try half that. And then the color also half. And do one more quick test. And that looks a lot better. So, okay. So I think we're pretty good to go on the skin texture and the sheen. And we're running out of time for part 7. So in part 8, we'll go in and add a few bumps, a few wrinkles here and there, and probably work on the eyeballs themselves too. So that's going to be it for part 7. Thanks for paying attention this long. Sorry it took so long, and that's going to be it. Catch you in part 8.